My name is Andrew Armstrong. I am the facilities superintendent out here. I recently graduated from college with a PhD in material science and engineering, and I was thinking, what am I going to do that is going to combine being outdoors in the wilderness and ranching, which I love, and also kind of this interest in science, which I kind of developed from my time working on my PhD. And I basically saw this job pop up at Taylor Ranch, and it wasn't really what I was intending to do. But, in life you just take these opportunities and jump on it and see what happens. And it's kind of why I'm out here. I grew up in my family, had a backcountry trail building construction business. And one of the projects we rebuilt Cabin Creek Airstrip, which is the airstrip about 5 miles upstream from here. That was in 1999, and back in those days, the caretakers were Jim and Holly Atkinson, and we would come down here and see this little Shangri-La of just a beautiful ranch out here, and come see Jim and Holly, who worked with mules in this traditional way, and were really kind of a inspirational figure in my life. And I saw this job come about, and here I am. Hey, Blackie.
That was good. Can you talk about what your daily life here is like? What the daily operation of Taylor Ranch is like?
Well, the life out here depends a lot on the seasons. It's not like you do something new, or you're kind of doing something new just depending on when it needs to be done. So, in the fall, you might be. I'm gonna restart that one.
Yeah. Or let's see. What does the daily operation of Taylor Ranch look like?
Yeah, so the daily operation of Taylor just kind of depends on the seasons. Like today was a day with a bunch of people, and part of it is just accommodating people, making sure everyone's happy, keeping people busy, working on people's projects, making sure that kind of the progress is forward. Recently I was doing a bunch of haying, so I was, had to get all the equipment up and running, do a bunch of maintenance, kind of figure out how it all worked because it's my first year back here. My dad came in and helped me out with figuring out how all this horse-drawn equipment works. Currently we're using a tractor to pull it, but so I was recently, just using a pitchfork and tossing a bunch of hay in the hay wagon, and then taking it to the barn, and I kind of had to fix up the barn because the barn's been out of commission for a bit, so I've been working on that. These days, to tell you the truth, there's a lot of irrigation, so moving sprinklers around, kind of redoing the irrigation, keeping the airstrip mowed, kind of working with the stock, kind of getting the electric fences all ready to kind of keep them corralled. It just kind of depends on the day. I wake up and I think I'm going to do something, and I end up doing kind of something else. And it's kind of how it is for most of the year. And, in the winter, you're kind of getting the pipes all ready for the freeze up. In the middle of the winter, you're going up there and you're clearing the intakes and making sure the water keeps running. You're going out and checking for the wildlife activity, because just in the middle of winter, it's kind of crazy back here, the amount of mountain lions and wolves and deer. It's it's kind of a cold, hungry canyon. So in the middle of winter, that's kind of what we're doing. In the spring, kind of getting the garden going. We did a lot of fields reduction, so we did some prescribed burns out here. And then, at some point, everything opens up enough that we can start having students and groups back here middle of spring. And we run internships. That's kind of early summer, and we run that until kind of the fire season starts, which is about now, and I'm kind of getting all the irrigation prep for fire season, and then we'll have a semester in the wild, and I haven't done that yet, so I'm intrigued to see how that all goes.
Can you talk about the animals currently at Taylor?
Yeah, so when I first got the job here, I figured I had a dog and I had a cat, but I heard there were a lot of pack rats, so I went down to the McPaws animal shelter here in McCall, and I got a couple kittens. And I've been here about 1 year, and here is this guy. He's a good one. So I have 3 cats, and they all do a good job of dealing with the mice. You can either have lots of mouse traps or you can have cats. So I chose to have cats. There were a lot of pack rats, and I have a dog, Josie. She's not here at the moment. She's out at the vet. But she does a lot of work in kind of dealing with the pack rats. She also does a good job of establishing the relationship between us and like all the predators that are coming in here, and kind of like letting them know that, this is our place. And then we've got some chickens. We've got 5 chickens, which is great for me and several other people. But, if you have big groups, there's not quite as many eggs. Right now I've got a huge amount of hummingbirds getting in on the action of my hummingbird feeder. I realized that I'm kind of worried that if I stop feeding them, they might just all die off, because I think I've established a large population simply on sugar water. And recently, we rode in a horse and a mule, and so I'm kind of starting off a journey of learning how to, use pack animals in the wilderness, and that's partly why I came out here, is to kind of get that experience. So that's kind of the domestic animals that are out here. We have a lot of sheep coming down, especially in the winter. They come down mostly across the canyon. They have a wintering ground up in Horse Mountain, and they come down here and use the licks. They kind of have a pretty periodic, well-timed schedule where they kind of come down to these kind of this slough here, and then they go on up to a salt lake up high, and they just kind of have their route. Mountain lions, they're probably all around all year long, but you can be confident that they're around in the winter when you can see their tracks come through. Sometimes they'll slink right up through, right through here and be real close to the cabin, and I'm always concerned about my cats, and I think that's for very justified reasons. Right now, the bears are starting to come in a bunch. There's just bear, droppings all over right now, and they're, it's been a really good berry season. We had a long wet spring, and they got a lot of currants and gooseberries because of that. So the bears they just seem real happy right now. And right about now we start having a herd of deer on the property, probably like 20 with a resident buck. It was Bucky last year, that was the guy, and we'll just see who it is this year. And there's a real plethora of grouse on the strip, and they kind of been doing their little turkey dance where they get their tail feathers all up in a fan, and they get their throats all bleeding, and it's a good time of the year right now. So the question was, we'll just talk about history of. Start with the chair.
Yeah, whose chair are you sitting in?
Yeah, so this is Dave Lewis's chair. I don't know a whole lot of the history of it, but Dave Lewis, or sorry, going back. This is Jess Taylor's chair, and he made it. I don't know exactly when he made it. It's a really good chair. When I first got here, I noticed that it actually had a broken rocker, and so I ended up fixing it with some aluminum from an old plane. Jess Taylor was kind of like, he was a big game outfitter. He was kind of one of the top, he was probably the top bighorn sheep outfitter. Maybe not because he was so good, just because the bighorn sheep here are just huge, and also there were a huge amount of them at that time. But he ended up rebuilding the strip to make it longer, because it was pretty short at the time. But before he had rebuilt it, the main strip that he would use to like resupply Taylor Ranch was Soldier Bar, and
Wait. It's gonna be
too long.
no. Too.
Oh yeah.
No one. It's not enough context. Let's end at the chair. You know what I mean? Rather than
Okay.
beginning here. Let's
Yeah.
go back. Let's go back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Starting with the Native Americans.
You don't have to go back that far. There are other people who talk about that.
Yeah, I feel like Jim and Holly'd be much better at that, and various people.
Just.
How about just
Can you
Jess Taylor?
Or Dave Lewis?
Dave
Or
Lewis.
Sheep
Oh yeah.
Eater? Or
Sheep Eaters.
Yeah, Sheep Eater campaign. Dave Lewis as a Packer, maybe beginning.
Well, I'll just start with like Native Americans. You can go as far as you edit out as what you want.
So, can you talk about the history of Taylor Ranch?
Yeah, so I guess this place has been inhabited for eons by the Sheep Eater band of Shoshone Native Americans. And, they were probably, we will never understand the land as they understood it. Their ability to hunt and, kind of live with the migration patterns of animals and the salmon, is not something that probably we'll ever, I don't think we'll ever be able to kind of get to that level of understanding. And they were a mostly peaceful people. There was, however, basically some Chinese miners who were murdered on the Middle Fork, and the murder was claimed to be done by Sheep Eater band of Shoshone, and the U.S. cavalry started in a campaign of, basically exterminating them and moving them, and so they basically came down Big Creek and ran into some Sheep Eater resistance. I think there was only a few Sheep Eater warriors, and they anyways, they ended up basically ambushing the cavalry and forcing them up into the Vinegar Hills and setting fire. And anyways, it was kind of it was a bit of a defeat for the cavalry, but ultimately, there was this campaign to deal with the Sheep Eater band, and but one of the Packers that were resupplying the campaign was his name was Dave Lewis, and he had lived in Slate Creek, which is just down below Grangeville on the main salmon, and he kind of just realized that it was a really beautiful spot, and he came back here to just live, and He originally just had one cabin up there. There was this lodge, and he built his home, and this is pretty bad. Anyways, Dave Lewis lived here. He just lived until he was like 90 or something here. He was just this real outdoorsman. He basically no, I'm just kidding now.
I mean, we don't even have to do this. I kind of like listening to you talk. I kind of want to know what your favorite thing about managing Taylor is.
You know, I mostly just love the adventure. You know, like in the middle of winter, it's just me, and I can go out and get on my skis and get on the Big Creek Trail and kind of like ski up to Cabin Creek and stuff, and kind of hang out with all the wolves. And you just, to tell you the truth, I'm like going up there. It's like this cold, dark, hungry canyon. There's only about, late December, there's about 1 hour of sunlight that hits Taylor Ranch. And Taylor Ranch gets the most sun of anywhere in Lower Big Creek. So it's just, there's no sun. And you're going along, and all these predators, that up there, all these predators are like looking down on you. They're watching you. And you're just skiing along with your dog, kind of exploring, seeing what they're up to. You get on some wolf kill, and you're just glad you're not a deer. But I think that, that's what I love is exploration. There's so much to explore, and part of the reason I got some stock in here is just to help explore it. There's only so much you can do on your feet, in my impression. I mean, especially if you're like a manager and you have to like come back every once in a while, and also everything from here is uphill, and it's really steep, and so it's just like super hard to get to. But just going out, you kind of have this appreciation of place, and I think that's pretty much what I like about being out here.
Have you had any memorable animal encounters or experiences that stand out to you from your time at Taylor?
I think just kind of one of the, I don't really know exactly. I mean, I think that here, one of the most special thing is seeing all the sheep. They come down. They don't really seem to care too much about you. And, just kind of living in a place where there's like sheep coming onto your property is pretty cool. And, but also the other thing I think is really cool is like the wolves. There's a trail that goes up, and goes up to these benches up there, and the wolves will just be up on that first bench, and they'll be just like looking down at you. You hear them in the winter. You hear them probably at least twice a week in the night, and I go down there to feed the chickens and give them water and stuff with my dog, and my cats also join me usually, so I go on these like little walks with my dog and my cats. And I was going down there, and there's these wolves out there looking at me, and you're looking back at them, and you're just, I don't know, it feels, there's something primal about it, and I think to me, that's kind of what wilderness brings, is some sort of like primal relationship with like game and place. Yeah, so that's kind of one of the reasons I like hunting a lot, is just because you're kind of in this like primal situation where you're like your senses are really attuned, and it's different than just going out for a hike. So that's you're a real part of it out here. You're the predators realize that you're out here, and the game also realizes you're out here, and in some way you are. The deer they're not scared of you at all, and I think they find sanctuary here. And the elk, I don't think the elk find sanctuary here. They're just, maybe with this haystack this year, they'll find sanctuary here. But I don't know. You're just a part of it all.
Do you think the wolves looking down from that bench see you as a fellow predator or as prey?
I think they're just mostly interested. They don't recognize you as prey. I think they're pretty smart. They recognize you as something that they don't really want to mess with. When I was doing all these like skis up and down the canyon, I never had any like sort of protection at all. I didn't have like a pistol or anything. And I think I had like an air horn or something. Sometimes. I think maybe, I don't know. The thing about wolves is they're not gonna go after you. I mean, I know there's been some students who have been like followed by wolves, and I think the wolf is just interested in like what you are, interested in learning if you are a prey. They're not sure right away. It's not like a grizzly bear that is definitely something to be concerned about. But it's hard to like not think about what an apex predator they are when you're like skiing up in this canyon and you look at their tracks, and they're these just like huge tracks. They look like bigger than a horse. And you're trying to convince yourself that they're not as big as a horse when you're going up, because they're not. But they've got these huge feet, and so you're following these wolf tracks going this way, and you're wondering, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, should I be continuing to go this way? And then you get to a kill, and it's just like carnage. There's like, especially they tend to make the kills, on the creek. So there's just like wolf tracks everywhere. There's just like blood everywhere. And you think to yourself, you're like, I'm a very small deer. I don't know what it is they recognize about humans that makes them realize that we're not, prey. I'm most scared about my dog. And I worry about them going after my dog, and after talking with a fish and game biologist, it seems like it's pretty reasonable to be worried about my dog, even if I'm right there. But the wolves are king in the winter here. Mountain lions stay away from them. So I think last year I went up to Cabin Creek, and I saw, like, I don't know if it was a wolf or a dog, or wolf or a coyote up there, but I saw this, like, animal coming down, and I turned around and left. I bailed. I'm a whip. I don't know. I just must be a wuss or something, but there's something primal about me that says, like, I'm a small deer. So
about is that you have a PhD in a cutting edge area of material science, and yet you are here in the deepest Idaho backcountry, making a living. And I'm wondering why you chose this. You know, what drew you to this place?
Well, I guess my mom would probably ask that same question.
What would you say to her?
I don't know. You know, I don't know.
One
I'd
thing
say,
I would say that is that it seems to run in your family.
yeah, my mom would be probably like wanting me to become like a professional or a professor or something like that. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of ways this is like who I am. You know, I've always felt a connection to the backcountry and also being out here. I could think it depends what you do in science. You know, like, you know, progress for progress's sake isn't necessarily like, I don't know, it's not that useful. Like, you know, if you think of science out here at the wilderness, you know, yeah, there's a lot of very fancy scientific instruments that you can put out, but just, you know, putting them out for the sake of like collecting the data isn't like that important. You know, I actually wanted to do like nuclear engineering, and I was applying for jobs at INL to do, because I mean, I've always cared about climate change a lot, and trying to figure out solutions to climate change. I was a solar installer for a long time. I worked on like designing and building energy efficient buildings, whether it was from like for like the military or just for like, you know, buildings here in McCall. But you know, I don't know. I started to think that maybe solar, it just seemed like there's so many panels that you need, and we use so much energy as like a society, and it just felt like maybe nuclear was the best option to kind of, maybe it was like one of the only, it was almost the easy option, you know. We've already gotten it as this way of making a huge amount of power without carbon, or, you know, I think that people's fear of radiation is, while like justified in some ways, it's also like, you know, we're scared of the unknown, and I think that a lot of, I don't know, I feel like the whole like nuclear industry needed to be like kind of shooken up and like fixed. So, but I applied for like nuclear engineering, and I didn't have any like material science background, and you know, so I just, you know, took what opportunity was given to me, and I was all about that, and I wouldn't change it. But anyways, I don't know. I also don't know if I'd like to live out in Idaho Falls. I'm not really. I hear that the, you know, the landscape around Idaho Falls is like awesome, but it's really hot there, and I just, you know, I grew up in McCall. Like, McCall is beautiful. It's hard to leave it. I have this ranch. You know, I have this beautiful ranch, and it's just like hard to like imagine moving to Idaho Falls for like a job, you know. So here at Taylor, I also have a beautiful ranch, and you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. We'll just see what happens in the future, but ultimately I'm here because it's some combination of science and ranching, and both of those things are really like things which like drive me. Even though the science isn't necessarily in my field, I know how to fix a data logger, and I know how this equipment works, and I can just make it work. And I think there's a lot of value to keeping all this equipment running, and I don't know. It's both technical and like using my mind to fix things and stuff. So that's about it on that regard. I really went on a tangent, but anyways. I also just really love the nature. I love watching these little hummingbirds do their tail fanning, and I don't know. It's a good place to be.
I would say that your practical and technological expertise is why Taylor needs you, but I also get the sense that you need Taylor in some interesting way.
Well, I don't know if I don't really know what Taylor needs. I mean, I do my best, but yeah, no, it's definitely a mix of like practical. You're sitting out there moving irrigation, and you're sitting there and you're connecting pipes and you're whatnot, and doing I really actually like electrical work, so I do a lot of like electrical work. And I've done a bunch of solar work in the past, so I understand like how all these off-grid systems work. But yeah, I mean, I took the job partly because I was, my dad, his whole life was built on using team of mules to like build backcountry projects. So he built, I don't know exactly, but about 200 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail. He built a bunch of other trails as well. And growing up, I remember, I just remember growing up and we were building trail, and we were, I just remember running, my dad would tell me we're going to do a dynamite charge, and I'd go and run away and find some rock to hide behind or something like that. And so I don't know. I mean, in some ways, just kind of honoring the family business. Well, not just, I don't really even care about business, but just, I feel like I'm just kind of, in this like modern world, how do you stay true to your roots? And you gotta kind of be creative or whatever, you just gotta take opportunities that you've gotten. Here I have an opportunity to work with stock and kind of figure that out and see if that's something I'm interested in doing. So that's what I got. Probably we should have done this before I drank the whiskey.
That was good. Yeah, that was really good. You're about to manage a number of students who are coming to Taylor in the fall for a semester in the wild, and I'm wondering how you anticipate what this experience will mean to them. What is the value of a place like Taylor for
students,
and especially students who aren't familiar with this type of life in the backcountry?
Well, I don't know. I think that growing up I took for granted what it meant to be back here, and I don't know. I'd just say that when you're living in town or a city or something like that, the days seem pretty short because there's always there's always many things going on. I don't know, you've got internet, you're driving places, you're doing all these things in this like super busy way. And you come back here and the days are really long, You get up early, especially in the summer because it's hot. And you get up early, and if you want to do anything, you're going to do it in the morning. I don't know. Let me think about this one for a second. Anyways, what was the question again? What is it going to mean to these students?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I most appreciate is just going for a hard hike or something like that. And if you go for a hard hike, you see a huge amount of country. You learn so much about the country. You see all these new places. It's a huge amount of adventure. There's always different things that happen that you're not expecting. And you kind of overcome. And you kind of just figure it out. And you just become really self-reliant. And I think that anyone who comes here to some extent learns that. But if you're back here for a whole semester, you're for sure going to learn that. And just that, endorphins you get after some experience that you're like just totally out of your comfort zone. That's what I like. What I like the most is going out, getting lost. And then just kind of trekking my way back until I find some place where I know where I am or something, or, just, yeah, I think that's one of the things about adventure is you go out and you don't know what you're doing and you just kind of figure it out. So hopefully, that's kind of like all of life, you're just figuring things out. The world's always changing. You just gotta kind of move on from that in the right direction, which is not always known. But be confident in being okay in unknown places, and I think whatever your walk in life, if you're comfortable being kind of in uncertain situations, it will benefit you. And I hope that all students learn that. And our intern, she sure learned that, and she had a great time back here. And she kind of it was only like a month and a half, but it really changed her. And I think that's kind of what I'm hoping. It's that type of skill.
That was good. That was a really good segment.
Oh, good. Confidence.
No, those are good lessons. I don't really have anything else unless you have something to add. I'm curious as to how you see yourself in the tradition of caretakers.
Well, I feel that there's a lot of weight in my shoulders, I have this picture of Jess Taylor up there in the Taylor cabin. And here I am on his chair. You know, to me, I live in their footsteps, and, you know, in that way, you know, like this chair when I first got here, it was broken, like the rocker. I don't know, you probably can't see it, but it was like the chair was broken. And, you know, Jess Taylor was renowned because he's renowned for various things, but one of the things he did was he repurposed this old airplane crash up at Soldier Bar, and he packed all this like airplane stuff. So there's various airplane stuff, you know, from the trapdoor to my attic to the smoker to his pack frame. You know, that's all these like aluminum aircraft parts. And you know, I was just thinking, you know, what would Jess Taylor, how would he like his chair fixed? And I thought, you know, so I found some more of that aircraft running around, because there's parts all over, and I kind of just fashioned some sort of splice with with aluminum from that old plane, and you know, rock's pretty good now. But you know, I don't know. It's kind of hard because, you know, well, first of all, you know, the sheep eater Indians, how you ever gonna like, you know, understand the country as well as they did? How you ever gonna, you know, we're not, you know, I survive on the mail plane that comes here, you know, and brings me groceries and stuff. I don't survive on the sheep and the land. You know, Dave Lewis, he knew this country. He was back here for, what was it, like 60 years or something. He knew this country so well, and he, you know, quite a hunter, and, you know, but here I am in the Jess Taylor cabin, and I feel some sort of affinity to him because he likes to, you know, build things out of aircraft and stuff, so I figure he's kind of a tinkerer. But, you know, he's a pretty strong personality who kind of expected the best out of people, and I know I just got this picture of him up there, and, you know, every day it kind of reminds me to, you know, I don't know, what would he do? So I think he was a really hard worker, and he's pretty accomplished. And then, you know, there were the Jim and Holly, and they're pretty much, I think that's one of the hardest things to like compare myself to them, because they were both like professional biologists, and they did such a good job back here. And their vision for Taylor was pretty compelling. But, you know, they were both like these big game biologists, and it was also kind of a different time where, you know, you could just go out and, I don't know, fairly easily tranquilize an animal and do research on it and not have a huge amount of bureaucracy involved with that. I don't know. So I mostly look towards like Jess Taylor and the Atkinsons. There were also the Gags who lived here, and they don't inspire me. No, that's not true, but it's kind of true. So, well, you can edit that part out.
Yeah. I think Jim Atkinson in particular would be happy with the recent addition of stock.
Well, I think they both would. I mean, yeah. Holly was pretty into me just getting even like anything on here, you know. And, you know, Jim was like an amazing hunter, you know. The idea of like taking elk with a primitive bow that he built is just like, you know. Hopefully this year I will hunt with a primitive bow for deer. I feel like I could get a deer. There's no way I could get an elk. No way. Bye. I might be able to get a deer. So that'd be fun.
You mentioned that you read their book and you really liked it, and then you read it a second time, and you also really liked it, and it was because you had been immersed in the landscape that they're describing in the book that it impacted you so much the second time around.
Yeah. Yeah, so the first time I read it, I knew Jim and Holly from before. I hadn't read their book, but I applied for this job, and I think I just assumed that I was going to get interviewed. And so I figured, I better start with at least a little bit of literature about kind of what the job entails before I do the interview. So, I read it and I found it pretty fascinating. But recently, I've been here for basically, in 2 days, it will be 1 year now that I've been here. And, I read that book again, and I know all these places, when he said that these mountain lion, they had some juvenile mountain lions that they'd released, and they were up in these cliffs past the lower pasture, and they just, we're talking about how they're really steep and gnarly, and these are cliffs which I've always looked at, and I've always been like, wow, why would I ever go up there? I mean, I don't know, it's just like, you start to realize that, you just start to see what these places that they're talking about are, whether it's, Monumental Creek and going up there, or, yeah, I mean, just, I don't know, there's just some sort of, second time you read it and you know all these places, it's a whole different experience, and you really see what they're talking about. But yeah, I mean, I've always thought about these cliffs, and I've kind of explored through them a little bit. But that's kind of one of the cool things about hunting, or also just the research they were doing. Is just, you would never choose to go up there, unless you were trying to go up there for some reason, and yeah. So, but dealing with their water sources and how they would deal with their creeks and stuff. You just learn a lot of little tricks that you didn't pick up on before. Because that wasn't a very good answer, but I did try.
No, that was good. This has been good. I mean, we've been talking for 45 minutes. We can wrap it up, unless there's unless you feel moved to say something about anything Taylor related.
I do not. I think I'm good.